is a project from early 90s. But the idea of the work was to do this tower. Tower of Babelon is a reference, the story in the Bible. And I took this story as a kind of background for the piece itself. And the idea was to have this tower done with radio. And the idea was that each radio would be in synchrony with a different radio station. We had a team collecting radio from second-hand places because I want to go to this second-hand stuff. I could have more diversity, would be more interesting. The fact that playing together, you have a kind of this huge cacophony, right? But you still can, like, as you turn the piece to go around, you can listen specific radio, specific sounds. We work with around 1,000 radios. Anyway, it's much more connected with the memory, because usually people, they recognize a radio that was in a grandfather or uncle, something like this, because the radio allows to dream. So that's one of the meaning from the beginning. I remember when I was a kid, I used to listen radio in a dark room, and of course you travel in your mind, with radio. And this always fascinated me. I think the radio is a kind of magic object, so that always allows you to go away from that space. And in some way, it deals with a word that I found maybe the most beautiful word, which is lejos. It's a Spanish word for far, far away.
Okay.
That's fine. Like this?
Ok. Como está lá
Always changes, look.
Tá tão vermelho agora.
So how does it work with the installation when you now mount it again? Will you always add new things? Like
Yes.
you added the
Yes, the piece keeps changing, right?
yeah.
Through the times, it starts quite different, and now it's allows. Vamos abrir isso aqui para ele. Aqui está bem vermelho, né? Depois ele vem para cá.
Yeah. See, we're updating the fridge as well.
I'm hungry. The name of the piece is Red Shift, and the name of the first part, this part is Impregnation. I imagine that for some reason someone had all these objects and furniture, everything of the same color in the same room. That was the basic idea. Later I decided it would be red for different reasons, because it's a very symbolic color, war, this kind of thing. And for sure, it allows a lot of interpretation, meaning, and it was very open in this sense. And basically it's this. The idea for the piece was to make it the most natural possible. Natural in the sense that we try not to interfere in the color of the object. They would be a kind of found object, in fact, but I want this kind of natural, industrial color. So, and the idea was to have all the shapes going from the almost orange to wine color. This room is basically a collection of collections. So you have collection everywhere. And the idea was to have every color on the walls, a painting collection, vitrines, but at the same time could be a kind of a pathology as well. It's a kind of a maniac for the specific color. Less than a collector, I wouldn't live in a room like that. Because the piece itself is a kind of connection of fake logics. It first attracted the attention because of the proportion of the bottle and the amount of paint on the floor. But in fact, what it introduces is the perfect horizon level, which is the surface of water, of liquid. And of course, the color, the red color, instead of transparent water, came like almost naturally as a kind of final nexus for the whole scene. Well, I was born in Rio, actually in this area, Botafogo, but I moved before I was 4 years old. I was a teenager in Brasilia, and then I come back in the late 60s to Rio, but I always lived like 1 year here and went to the mountains, Petrópolis, went to Paraty for 1 year, then I went to New York, and I love Rio, but at the same time I'm a kind of a dissident of the city. But now since years my life is based here, the songs and everything, the studio, so I'm kind of readapted. And since a teenager, I'm always kind of against any type of nationalism, you know. And mainly thinking in art, in terms of art, it's a free territory for everybody, I think. And I think an artist shouldn't have no country, you understand? This project from April 1970 was based in production, distribution, and control of information. So at that time in Brazil, we faced a dictatorship, very hard. And of course, newspapers, TV, radio, they reach a lot of people, but at the same time, they are very easily controlled by authority. So the idea of the work was to create a kind of system of circulation of information that which will be hardly controlled. So for that I use the Coca-Cola bottles, because the fundamental idea of the work, I think, it's to insert the notion of circulation, of this kind of circuit that exists on society but were not being operated by people. And, of course, yet, to give voice to individuals. For that I use a silk screen on adhesive, like transfer, and then to put it on the Coca-Cola bottle. The type of information was basically information that couldn't circulate through usual media. And should be names of people that get arrested or killed by the dictatorship. Basically, it refers to political information. But at the same time, there is some of them that says, like, which is the place of the work of art. So it was a discussion about the nature of the artwork, the space. And in fact, when I choose to show these political questions, it was a personal attitude in face of the work. So the work was always to denounce this type of crime, you know, that committed by a dictatorship at that time. We are here at Eioini. It's a contemporary art center in Brazil, the most important these days, which started in 2001. And Imensa is the first piece I have here. Originally, it was a piece I did in 82, 83 with wood, 1 meter by 1 meter. And for Eioini, we did in steel. And the piece itself is basically a progression, 2 progressions. One for the chair is half each time, and the table is a quarter. Banknotes, it depends of circulation. And of course, it's much more large circuit than the Coca-Cola and reach much more people. And then finally, in 1976, I did this, when they killed Herzog, this journalist. He was arrested in São Paulo, and the next day he appeared dead in the jail. And the military said that he hung himself with his tie in the cell, in the prison, which is ridiculous because he couldn't be hanged himself like that. But the death of Herzog helps to speed the process of reparation, of democracy. So this was 1976, and in fact, it still took 8 years until the power came back to civilian again. But this was the beginning, Herzog. Bom dia. Can you explain a little bit the project?
Well, I find it very amusing working with something so different like a big a piece of art of installation in a factory like this where we normally produce basic tools for carpenters and bricklayers and so on.
One part of the piece called fontes, it's these 4 models of these meters. You know? We call in Brazil método de carpinteiro, trena de carpinteiro. And so the 4 models, basically, they are the standard one, you know, centimeter and inch. And then they have a second model, which is you keep the distance. You change the distance in between each number and also the number sequence. And finally, this one that you have, you keep the sequence, but you change always the distance in between the numbers, like this, from 36 to 27, and then from 27 to 21, much more longer. So we supposed to have in the piece around 2,000 of each model hanging from the ceiling.
Cildo has to supervise the assembling of the folding rules because the girls can't understand. They're used to 1 to 200 or 1 to 100, and they don't understand the chaos in the folding rules that Cildo created.
The piece is a kind of attempt to materialize numbers, to make something, a thing so abstract as number, to allow it to have a physicality, like to bring to reality something that at the beginning is very abstract. And I'm using 2 systems of measuring, time and space. It became, at one point, because of the kind of disorganization of these 2 systems of measuring, a kind of number among numbers, so kind of lost in number. Fontes consists of 4 parts. The first, the meters hanging from the ceiling, and then the clocks on the wall. It's the same system, 4 different models. Here we have 2. Let's change the sequence, the number sequence, or the distance in between them. In the case, also the sequence. And 2 more. The numerals, the number on the floor, and the soundtrack, which is the clock sound. Every work I did, it appeared in a different way. I couldn't speak about the methods. It's much more kind of biography of each work. Some of them I still remember how they were born, but they come from different situations, different time of the day, of the year. So they just come, they do a lot of notes, and then you come back sometime immediately. Sometimes it takes like 36 years between the moment you first start the project and you first make it. You know? The piece consists in balls in this metal grid, which is a medieval material. But the fact when you put it together, they became kind of high technology stuff, like graphic or something like this. And I like this. And the idea was something to think in when you take a net and you catch things. Because the show was about the arrival of Europeans to Americas. At the beginning, I thought people could walk on it. But the fact is that not because of the Côte de Maille itself, but because of some of the balls, they are very fragile. So I think in order to preserve the piece, the balls, finally we're not doing any moving. This piece, it's an edition that I have done after Globetrotter. And Globetrotter itself is a joke with Globetrotter, but it's because of this material that they use as safety, basically for safety gloves. And so I took a set of 16 balls out of the Globetrotter, the piece, and the idea was to manipulate this. Feeling of different texture, color visually, and weight, and material, you know, and play with, in fact. When you speak about weight and volume, of course you start to speak about density. And I think in some way density is a kind of resumes in some way the question of art in general, because you're dealing with appearance. For me, what you see is not exactly what it is, you know. And I think art plays a lot with this material and the representation that this afterwards became. I'm trying to walk every day in the morning, but usually I walk very early in the morning, like 5 o'clock. I start to walk for 1 hour and 20 minutes every day. I like to work mentally while I walk. I was born here, and it's true that he used to be the wonderful seat. And of course the light plays an important role in that. But I like to walk because I had walked in different seats in Brazil. But here is different in some way. You can feel very specific energy. And even with all the problem that every big city has, I think here it still has some spots that are very special. You can interact with nature. So it's always nice to walk here. They traveled quite well, but we had little problems with termites. They want to do a little tourism, But now I think they are treated, and I think we have no more termites, finally. We spent almost one year in Brazil collecting, basically in 3 different cities, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and Brasilia. When we are collecting, so we get in touch with people who loves radio, this kind of thing, and they plan to do a radio, a museum of a radio. So, and I hope they do it. The idea is that slowly by slowly we're gonna repair again and make all of them work.
Wow.
Babel.
Yeah.
Now Babel without termites. We can
Amazing.
off all the termites.
Are they all working?
Yeah. This is in fact became a kind of archaeological
Exactly, it's like an archaeological
of
site.
the radio history.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. So, yeah.
And radio anyway allows to imagine.
Yeah.
Because what I like is not only the radio itself, but the lights, the LEDs.
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
When you are in the room, you are
Yeah,
like
exactly, the
a
spatial,
kid
yeah,
of
yeah.
Indonesia, and then you start like...
It's almost like a mystical
tripping.
presence.
Yeah. This is a piece from '69, and it comes from the fact that when the Jesuits came to Brazil, they did a kind of interpretation of the Tupi Indian cosmogony. The Tupi, they had 2 sacred trees, pine and oak. And pine and oak, because if they attract, if they do a friction with a stick of pine in a piece of oak, they would obtain the fire. So I did this piece using exactly the 2 types of wood. And this work, when I did, I thought that it should occupy a full museum. At the same time, I was referring to the situation of the Indians in Brazil, because they always reduce it to almost nothing. There was a drastic reduction because of the colonization, and I think when the Portuguese arrived, there was around 1.5 million Indians in Brazil. And at one point, there were like 150,000. And the idea was to remember that, I think. And I think with the size and the scale, I would approach this original meaning. In a sense, sometimes I use the word kidnapping the visitor of the piece, even if it was for a few seconds, But in some way, it's that capacity that art should have to take you from that space and that moment to another thing. Através started, in fact, in '83. I was working on a table, and I took something, the cellophane out, and I crunched it, threw it at the basket, and went back to what I was doing. And then I started listening to sounds, and of course it was the cellophane working. And this was the start. Of course, there is also the fact that in Brazil, all the buildings start having gates gates after gates, and kind of. And the structure is a labyrinth, and the idea is that the sight, the vision, can go through this material, but exactly not through the cellophane. If I use glass, I would, in some way, kind of point to this possibility of break all this barrier. It's a kind of, not a suggestion, but it's a reminder of the possibility of always to go through barriers. In some pieces, I try to use fear as a material. So, because I think when you are in a situation, dangerous situation, I think your sense increases a lot, you know. And so this is an opportunity to convert danger or fear in something for the idea of the work. Basically, the sight go through a series of material that are kind of oppressive. And to have this different material increase dramatically the sense of oppression and danger. And I try to play with this. We are using around 29 items, and most of them you can find in the stores or hardware or textile. So, in fact, they're not difficult to find. I think it's more difficult to find them together. But this is the idea of the piece as well. I don't have a kind of a specific method of work. Because I think each piece comes from a different source and in a different way. And I like this possibility that art allows, that for every new idea or proposition, you are able to start from zero. And this, I think, is very interesting concerning art. You don't have to go to a specific code in order to express. But usually it's like this. It can come from a fact, a small thing I have seen, an object, a situation on the street. It comes from different origin.
I met Cildo in Kortrijk in Belgium.
89.
In 89, when he was showing for the first time his work at Través, True, and we met there. And after, some years after, also came and we began to go there, France, Brazil, and that's it.
Yeah, I think she's correct in this. I was doing this piece for the first time. And she came for the open, and then I don't know what's happened, but I felt in love, and then we stayed together. I have a son from my first marriage, Pedro Ariel, and he was living here with his mother, and Catherine, she was living in France. So for some years, I tried to split my time in between both songs because I didn't want one could have more time than others. I tried to be just like this. And this is You know, justice is always very hard. It's something very hard.
Oh, it's okay. I'm here since 2 years, and I like to be here. Of course, it's very different from my country, but I like Brazil. I like very much.
Actually, we hang around 7,000, is that? Brother, yes. Actually, this piece, the model, is the Milky Way. So it's a double spiral. So, so it has the side, the shape is like this. And then if you see it from the top, it's like that. And so this system now, I mean, allows to, it's a very precise way to deal with this situation. So you can just place the pins in the area that the red, and then we take off the pins and put the nylon, and it's done. That's a silly thing to say, but I hate to do repetition thing. So for me, it has been always a problem if I have to do the same thing over and over. But fortunately, I have some angels around me, so this makes things easy. So I must finish. Those are very short. This is broken. It should be this one. Probably, no, put a normal one here, just here. This is a system that we use for the first time. As you saw before, it's much more rational, no? More light, and no, right now everything is under control. We work from the top, this is a plan, and it's come nicely. And it's a matter, as I say, of labor and time, and I really hope we succeed. I'm sure we're gonna succeed. The soundtrack is like that, so we're gonna have
four loudspeakers.
Four loudspeakers, and each one with a different speed or frequency.
Okay, so then it will be more cacophony.
Yeah. We're gonna increase this what we actually listening now. But yeah, this is almost right.
So what's the time? What's the time?
Well,
which one is right?
The red one there.
That one.
This piece was done in 1987 for a show that was referring to this historical episode in the south of Brazil. The Jesuit priests tried to establish a kind of community with the Indians at that time. And I want to do a piece that was very direct, a kind of mathematical equation, connect basically three things. Material power, and that's the coins. Spiritual power, the host, and the result of this combination, which is always tragedy. Each time that you have, and we have a lot through the history, material power and spiritual power, we go always through tragedy. At the beginning, I thought I could use human bones, but this shows to be really difficult. So I went for cow's bone, which in some ways connect with the culture of the south of Brazil, the gaúchos, because it was the Jesuits who, I think, first brought the cows. And as I have these two things, bone and the bones, I thought I could use something that at the beginning is so fragile as material to emphasize the precarity of the construction, let's say, to try to give this feeling, you know, of a heavy thing being supported by such a fragile element. And of course, we could change the central column. Instead of host, I could use, I don't know, the Talmud, the Alcorão, the Bible. I mean, any religious, symbol. This piece, Bombanel, I think it came directly from a thing we used to do as a kid, which was to use a magnifying lens in order to burn something, concentrate the sun energy to a point precise. This ring belongs to a series of condensados that I started in '69, and I did the first one. And particularly this one, that is, there is a lens, and the focus is on the surface of the gunpowder, which is at the bottom of the piece. So in fact, if you stay under the sun after a while, you're going to explode. And I think basically because when you are like volatile, when you are in a situation of potential danger, in a situation of danger, your sense gets much more accurate, much more bigger. And I think that's why I use to use the danger almost as a material in some piece. Each period has its problems and its advantage. So I'll try to be quiet with each one of them. Let's see if it will work for a little while more. I hope so. But of course you change. I mean, every second you are different. But at the same time, there is something that I feel I am still the same.
course, if I can help him, but not as a curator.
Of course, we
but,
discuss about, but we try to separate this
Because otherwise it's complicated.
almost impossible.
Yes, impossible.
To confess.